from an autistic perspective, allistic people look like they just kind of randomly wander around and bump into each other and accidentally get things done sometimes. Like, that's what it looks like. Like, I'm amazed by how little most people in the world actually think about what they're doing compared to how often I feel like I have to think about what I'm doing. The things about autistic people that seem so unreasonable and unfeasible really has to do with the autistic person not really understanding their own needs very well. Like, what the autistic person actually needs is emotional regulation, but they're not educated enough on their autism to know how to reasonably achieve that regulation. We all have this, measure new information against our meaning-making maps to decide whether or not we think that it is a lie, whether or not it is manipulative BS, or whether or not it is made up, whether or not it's fantasy. Like, we have this contrast that we're creating, and it's a lot easier to get around with people socially if your contrast to what is BS and what is real is similar to other people. But if you're a person who's really focused on one aspect, really detailed of reality, and this one, like, really, you're looking at things in a really unusual way, it can be pretty maddening when you're looking at a whole world that doesn't see what you see. The autistic person needs extra assurance that you don't think they're crazy. We don't have the same intrinsic validation of our own experience that you do. It's a weird thing to have your personal experience invalidated constantly your whole life. It's going to be something I'm going to try to spend the rest of my life trying to explain. So the way that I think is the most productive way for an allistic person to look at this is if an autistic person notices something and is like, that's wrong, something's wrong. That doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% a fact, but it definitely means it's worth looking at whatever it is. The autistic person's perspective is going to be really unexpected and sound bizarre and sound embarrassing a lot of the time. Let's face it. But it's not invalid. It's just because their brain is picking up things in a totally different arrangement. Autistic people are here to think of the things you're not thinking of. That's what we do. Honor that. Put it in a place in your society where you can use that instead of putting us in places where we can't do what you expect of us. For most of my life, I did not understand what the word respect meant. Like, didn't know the definition. Because in my meaning-making map, my exposure to the word respect is that was a nonsense word that people would use to tell me what was wrong with what I just did. I knew I was being disrespectful all the time, but it could be anything. Like, I just existed in a state of disrespectfulness. And so the word, because I couldn't track a consistent pattern between that word and my life and when I saw it used, it just kind of seemed like whenever anybody didn't like what somebody else did, they were being disrespectful. Because autistic people aren't actually mad at allistic people. They're mad at the allistic hive mind. They're mad at the construction. And they're mad at anybody who represents that construction without making room for their differences from it. The construct that y'all are living in is valid. That is the thing that I'm willing to say that maybe a lot of other autistic people won't. It is valid, but it's still a construct. We might have stuff for you that's worth looking at over the water, all the different layers of context that can change what means what is so difficult for an autistic brain. And even though, like, we all have to deal with the reality of different things mean different things in different contexts, it just needs to be respected how much harder work that is for monotropic thinkers. Yes, as impossible as that person seems, that the entire world feels that impossible to that person. And they have to be that person living in that impossible world every day. For you, it's them, but for them, it's the world. It's every day. It's every single time. And then when we bury ourselves in basements and order Grubhub and Instacart and generate AI pictures, instead of people going, oh, good for you for finding accommodations to not have all of this suffering, they go, oh, well, look at how bad you are at being a citizen, and how much you're indulging all of these things to make your life easy because you can't handle any challenges. It is really awful to just go through life on the edge of your capacity and constantly suffer the assumptions that you're not working hard enough. I mean, I might become more militant about this in coming years, but I think that self-aware autistic people should all do somatic experiencing sessions. because we have trouble pairing concepts and ideas with the physical sensations of emotions in our bodies because of what I was saying earlier. Because we're experiencing something so different than everybody else, we can't, like, the way humans learn emotions is we look around at the world and we see their faces and the way that they react to things, and then we kind of get a sense of, oh, that feeling is this. But when what you're experiencing is so different from everybody around you, your brain isn't going to learn emotions and what feels like what. First of all, an autistic person really, really relies on logic, and these dysregulated states make them illogical, which is humiliating. So, like, the fact that we can sometimes go into a state where we no longer can logic with you is a really, really difficult thing for us to admit ever happens. It makes us feel so unsafe that there is the potential for a random thing to happen to us to make us lose our minds. So if you're talking to us and treating us like we've lost our minds, that's going to scare us even more. Being treated like we can control it and are just choosing not to because we don't care about you is doing incredible damage to us, the relationship, everything. This is what autistic people say to each other all the time. Here's the big secret. I'm using literal direct words. Why don't they hear the words I say? You have no idea how much, like just try to lean toward literal interpretations. If they didn't say, I don't like you, then it's not that they don't like you. Because trust me, a lot of autistic people have no problem telling you they don't like you if that's what they mean. In fact, we take great joy a lot of the time in being that person who's willing to say the thing that the allistic hive mind won't let you say. So for autistic people, there are a lot of situations where we just really need a specific little piece of information, and we want to ask for that little piece of information constantly. Allistic people are adding subtext to that little tiny piece of information and adding a bunch of extra junk to it. If I ask you a question and instead of answering it, you give me a speech and the answer is contained in the speech you just gave me, you just gave me a work of investigation. Stop making me investigate these little questions and just give me the answer. Because for me, it's a lot of work. For you, you just got to hand me a pen. For you, you just got to hand me a number. You just have to tell me who made the list. The context of why we want that list might not make any sense to you because of our different meaning-making maps. I might have a completely weird way that I'm organizing things, and so it matters to me if the person's last name starts with J. And I don't feel like explaining to you why it matters if the person's last name starts with J. That might take all day. I'd rather you just tell me who made the list and let the why be my business. What I'm actually asking of you is so simple, and the words that I'm using could not be more literal. You are making it so complicated, and I have no tools to make you understand how simple what I'm asking for you for actually is. And yet now I'm going to get all of this feedback about how entitled and angry and how impossible to satisfy I am when all I wanted was for you to tell me who made the list. Anyway, that's what it's like to have autism. And the reason, a lot of the time when we freak out, it's not necessarily because the problem or the situation that's happening is that big a deal. It is always that we don't know what to do. Like, it could be a really simple nonsense means nothing situation, but I will freak out and cry and have a full meltdown if I truly don't know what to do. So the fact that we can't stop the allistic subtext or the allistic subtext interpretations or allistic overwhelming zoom outs, the fact that logical pointed words can't accomplish that unless they're insanely aggressive is an extremely powerless feeling. And when it's really important to just take what an autistic says at their word literally. Sometimes given the context, that can be really hard to do, okay? So just because an autistic person is asking you a question does not mean it could be for literally no reason, just because they want to know. You know, a direct question to an autistic person does not imply a criticism of any kind. It's literally just, there's a hole of knowledge in my head that you might have. Let's see if we can repair that. Sometimes we want to know things just because we don't know them. Like, once I recognize that I don't know how to do brain surgery, I might be like, well, now I can't live with not knowing how to do brain surgery. Like, we'll just get like fixated on things. And like I said earlier, we can't really explain why we're asking questions sometimes because the reason we're asking the question might not make any sense to you anyway. And once again, you know, how often should we have to explain our behavior without it being assumed about? Sometimes when we're focusing on a really, really tiny detail, yeah, we're oversimplifying, like in those dysregulation moments they were talking about earlier. Those are absolutely times where we lose our lobes and we lose access to the context that shows us that we're not seeing it clearly. However, we're still monotropic even when we're not dysregulated, and we're still looking at things through a narrow tunnel. We're just not always in that state where we don't have access to what's outside of. You're doing people a disservice if you're babying them or placating them. Like there's a lot of these ideas of don't give them what they want, because then they'll learn that they can have a tantrum and do what they want. That is not a useful model of dealing with these situations. It makes it worse, and it continues to make it worse all over the world every day. And then everybody who's traumatized by that method comes to us for help. If I'm in a conversation and the subject suddenly changes to something I don't know as much about, or the topic pivots too fast, then I can't understand anything anybody's saying anymore. And that's what we call Peanuts voice. That is because on Peanuts, you can always tell when the parents are talking, but you can't understand what they're saying. Similarly, if what people are talking about is too outside of, what's in my attention tunnel at the moment, then I hear that they're talking. I hear that they're saying words. In fact, I might even hear the other stuff. I might hear, I might notice their body language. I might understand their body language and tone of voice, fine, but not be able to make meaning out of the words that they're saying at all. So the stereotype that autistic people are bad at social skills prevents a lot of diagnoses. So if you have people in your life that seem to be checking a lot of these boxes, but they're like, I'm not autistic, I'm outgoing, I'm an extroverted autistic, it exists. And that's the actual problem with privilege. When people talk about privilege, whenever I'm mad at somebody about their privilege, it's not because I'm mad at them because they can do things I can't do on principle and I'm just jealous. What I'm mad about is when they seem to think I can do what they're doing, and that I'm just choosing not to in some way, or that or that if I understood this thing that they understand, then I wouldn't be this upset. This is a huge problem with autistic allistic conflict, because from the allistic perspective, it so often looks like we're just anxious about nothing and that we just need to calm down. We're always told to be calm down, but we're upset about real things that aren't affecting you the way that they're affecting us, that are real. So it's not that we're lacking understanding about the situation, it's that we're lacking understanding about the autistic nervous system. For an autistic person, giving me more direct information is really helpful, because that means that's less to decipher. But for allistic people, because they don't consider it that much work to decipher this kind of thing, when we bypass the pool water and just kind of force things directly, directness comes across as criticism, etc. It creates like this invasion, right? Like, why is this autistic person having this intense communication with me when it's not necessary? Because it is necessary for them if you don't help. Because autistics require allistics to do social work that they aren't used to and don't understand, it can appear that autistics are being demanding. That's basically the purpose of the pool water, and that framework is to have an understanding of, when you're having a conflict with an autistic person, the difference in their experience than yours, what it is that you have that they don't. And it's really important to not resent or be mad at or to blame the autistic in your life for not doing pool water things when that's not available. Common sense is a very harmful concept for autistic people. We have uncommon sense, and it's valuable. I need you to tell all of your allistic friends this immediately. Common sense is an ableist term. Common sense, the way that the common sense is used conversationally, what it means in the allistic dictionary is, if you need this thing explained, then you're dumb, and that's not my fault. It's always blaming a person for not understanding that which was not explained. Who do you think is the most victimized by that? So for the allistic, they can have a sense of, okay, I can, in that big blue circle of ideas, they have access to the information that says this needs to be accurate and this doesn't, right? We don't have access to that information that says this needs to be accurate and this doesn't. So to be safe, we need everything to be accurate. I really want to make it clear to anybody out there who is in some sort of relationship with an autistic person in your life and you are at capacity, like if you are overloaded the way that my mother was, you're not doing that autistic kid a favor by trying to make yourself look like a good person, you know, and forcing your hatred of your life into their nervous system, because that's what's happening. There's this cultural narrative where everybody wants to be a good guy and a good person, and so when they're in a situation that's making them miserable, they want to tough it out. They want to be the guy. Like, I'm sure all of you in this class, you're beautiful humans that wanted to come learn more about autistics, probably really holding yourself to a standard, a beautiful standard, to be open-minded and understanding. But if you really can't withstand what a certain relationship is doing in your life, and you keep trying to squeeze a square peg, I mean, autistic masking is trying to force yourself into something that's unnatural, and I wouldn't want that on anybody, regardless of neurotype. I think that all autistic people deserve to have people who can handle them, and not people who are breaking their backs trying to figure out how to handle them. You know, we want to be authentically wanted.